Hey friends, Rachel here, and I've got a great, very relevant topic for, I believe, everyone out there as a working parent, and also who is wanting to maybe shift the boundaries of how you are working. Maybe you're remoting, maybe you're hybrid working, or maybe you're even in the office, but for whatever reason, you are feeling like you are tethered, not just to your devices, but maybe to your toddler. And so I'm laughing because tethered to your toddler, I've never said that before, but gosh, I mean, well, who isn't tethered to their toddler? But when you need to get work done, maybe, and you're working from home, this could be an issue. So today's topic, I think, will be hitting home with so many of us who have kids at home, which is really all about how to do what you need to do, how to take care of responsibilities while feeling tethered to your toddler or feeling tethered to whatever obligations you have. They might be children, they might be your pets, but the reality is they're interrupting or disrupting the time that you need for being successful and doing what you need to do at work. Let's get into it. Okay, so I had a situation with a client, and I want to share a little bit more context where it was someone who's working from home, doing a great job at her workplace, and has a three-year-old toddler who is interrupting the day. And it just feels hard and challenging because the things that need to get done are not getting done. But yet here she is as a really awesome mom who wants to serve her child, who wants to do things, and yet it's getting in the way of what needs to get done. So we had a conversation about this, and the reality is, if you were to take a step back and think objectively about this, what's really going on, right? And maybe you know someone in this situation, or maybe you've been in this situation, or maybe this is your situation right now, right? In some related way. Think about toddlers. Think about a 3-year-old, or even like a 2-year-old, or even a little older than a 3-year-old. What are they all about? What do they like to do? You might be thinking about it, and you don't even need to think too hard. The first thing this person said to me was tantrums. She knew her child really well. And yes, ding, ding, ding. So toddlers are all about testing the boundaries. Okay. Toddlers, as part of child development and formation, are literally testing out their bonds and individuating from their primary caretaker, right? This is all going back to childhood development and really formation, which is interesting in itself, but really there's no shortage of testing those boundaries. And we all know that, right? We've seen 3-year-olds in action, and they are fierce. They want to get their way, whether it's the highway or no way, or their way, or any which way, right? So they're going to do what they do no matter what you try to do, right? So it was very interesting as we continued the conversation. We'll call her Sally. It occurred to Sally that, okay, maybe there's some things that need to shift. And that's exactly it. So knowing our beloved toddlers, those dear children in our lives, and maybe you've got a niece or a nephew, maybe it's not your child, but you get the idea. There's this pattern of testing the boundaries. So as an adult who is clearly needing responsibilities done and tasks to complete, we need to change it up so that the boundaries stay in place while they're getting tested. Okay, so what could you do? What could be different for you if you are looking for maybe getting your stuff done? And maybe you're working from home, or maybe it's the holidays right now, for example, and there's a struggle to get the stuff done because you got a million other things you have to do, like shopping for gifts and hiding the gifts and cooking for people and hosting relatives or traveling. I mean, there's so many things. It tends to be a stressful time. It doesn't have to be, though. So the reality is we need to make a decision, and we, meaning you or whomever, has to change up the game a little bit to create new rules for this time period. They may not need to last forever because this is a phase, right? Being 3 doesn't last forever, or being 4, maybe it's even 7 years old, whatever the case is, we need to create the new boundaries. So what could you do differently? And this is where we need to make the choice that we want to do things differently. In Sally's case, there was a little hesitation, and the hesitation was around not being there for her child. Naturally, she wants to be there. She's the mom. Like, of course she wants to be there. But the reality is it becomes frayed as potentially the bonding can get disrupted when we have other obligations, right? So that's the work world, right? Being a leader at work means I need to get my stuff done. And I also need to show up for my family and my children. So we brainstormed some options. And I think that really it comes down to two things. And one is the choice, right? So the first thing is, you need to do something different, because the system you've got right now, whether it's the child literally pulling at your pant leg for whatever the moment of the day is that they need attention for, right? Because that's their job. Again, they're 3, they're testing these boundaries and being little humans. We can kind of delight in that as well, right? Even though it can be the umpteenth time of the day that they're trying this, but something needs to change. So one is that mental decision to say, okay, you know what? I can't keep doing this. This isn't working for me. What am I willing to implement now? And it may not be forever, but it might be for these couple months. And this person did have a caretaker and someone to help with them. So really, that was a great start. Obviously, like there's someone there, and you couldn't really work at all, my guess is, if there wasn't anyone there. So the first thing is to make that choice and say, you know what, I gotta be a little more effective with my boundaries. Doesn't mean you're a critic about yourself. You don't pass the judgment, right? These are the traps, these pitfalls we can fall into, right? The fixed mindset of like saying like, oh, I'm such a bad parent, like shaming ourselves. Like that's not going to serve you. Imagine you're the kind parent, the best friend that is speaking to you as a peer and saying, you know what, like, here's what I think will work. Why don't you, have you considered X? Have you considered working at the basement desk that might need a little beautification? Maybe I bring down a picture, or I spruce it up with some holiday glam, right? Like we need to make it fun for ourselves. And this was an option we talked about, right? That could be pretty cool. Maybe you can get out of the house for a couple hours, and it doesn't need to start with every day or a huge 8-hour day out of the house. This was another option we talked about, right? You're changing the system so that the boundary in the environment can be different so that you can be successful, because this is the part that needs to change. It's actually about our own individual responses to a stress system. And in that case, it might be us, like our nervous system is a little stressed out from feeling tethered and pulled and guilty, like all these things that could be going on. So the reality is, okay, that's not effective. That's not helping me much, and probably not my child much, because then they're confused. Like, can I be with them? Can I not be with them? But the key is to actually give yourself some self-love. And I say self-love, meaning care, self-care, and the self-respect to actually say, okay, here's what I know I need. This is what would really serve me. I got to get out of the house. Maybe it's for 10 to 2 p.m. on my busy day on Monday, because I know that starts me off for the week. I can get a clean slate, and I'm going to set expectations and keep myself accountable. Notice a couple things that I just said there, right? Like we can't just go ahead and do it without some planning. Setting expectations is a super, super underrated skill, right? Because it takes communication, and it takes being clear with what you want and setting those expectations so others can support you, right? So maybe she tells her caretaker, hey, on Monday next week, I'm out of the house from 10 to 2. She might even tell her son. And that was something we also discussed, because maybe he can prepare a little bit more, and it's not just some kind of really different situation that will also make things worse for him in the short term, right? Like maybe there's a bigger tantrum he'd have. So she really liked that idea and is going to be sharing that with her son and her caretaker. She's going to calendar it in her appointment book, because that's what's so important is when we write things down, not only are we 30% more likely to meet those goals, but, and I talk about this in the journaling as a superpower episode, by the way, just a recent episode here, where you're telling your brain it's important when you write something down. So you're actually adding significance to it, which is why when we calendar things, they actually can be more likely to happen, whether that's your digital calendar or your written calendar, whatever works for you. Okay, so what are you getting from this? What are your takeaways? Because this is an important topic where a lot of times our boundaries get a little flimsy, little flimsy, right? Around the edges, they might seep into areas that we kind of make excuses for, like, oh, it's just another Tuesday and it's the end of the year. So, I don't think I really need to get this done. I'm sure it could slip till January. I mean, maybe that's a luxury for you, but for most of us, it's easy to slip. It's a slippery slope, as I like to say. So know that when you start to feel like you're getting infringed, I don't know if that's a word, infringed upon your boundaries, and you're noticing maybe that overwhelm, like feeling overwhelmed, meaning sticky, like, oh, I don't know if I should do this, or I don't want to be on this project at this time because I don't think I'm going to get it done. And then your attention is divided. You're literally multitasking, right? Maybe it's home responsibilities like a toddler. Maybe it's a teenager. Maybe it's a needy cat or two and a pet, a rabbit. I'm just making these things up as examples. Hopefully you see my humor in there. It's all meant in jest and good faith, because the idea is that all of those literally are the same as multitasking in your brain. And fun fact about multitasking, I'm sure you probably have a judgment about multitasking, which is it actually leads to being less productive, and it decreases your IQ by 10%, because our brains are not designed to be like, what's the words? Process, like the dual processors. I'm not the engineer, my husband is, but yeah, dual processing. So you're like, having two modes at the same time. Like our brains are one processor, and we all kind of know this, right? Like when we switch from email, we have to like spend 15 minutes every time to get back into our rhythm and what we're doing. And so I could speak for a long time on that. Maybe that'll be a separate episode, actually. There we go. We just got a new episode. But the reality is, how do you set yourself up for success? And I think the first step is awareness, right? As a highly emotional, intelligent leader, you're aware that something needs to change. And this is where coaching can be great, because you may not know what it is or how to do it, but at least there's this awareness that it's not working anymore. And that's the beauty of doing something different. But it takes the awareness first. It takes the courage to change it, right? So you're going up against, my guess is, patterns you've had for a long time that feel really set in their ways, right? Or even beliefs that are informing those patterns that are unconscious, right? Man, our brains are unconscious 95% of the time, as I was recently reminded. So all of this to say that we can set ourselves up, but boundaries, limits, and expectations need to be revisited and set up again. And don't think of it like you need to please everybody or say yes to all these things outside of yourself. And remember, in this case, I made this example with a toddler. A toddler is the extreme example, right? Like they're just a one-way street. They're going to do what they do and throw the tantrum because that's their job, is to differentiate and individuate from their primary caretaker. Whew, yeah, so this is a big topic, and think about your world. What could you revisit for your boundaries? What might need a little more structure or a new and improved boundary for yourself that could work? And it will take effort, right? That's the hard part. It means you do something different. But guess what? I love this part about it. It will set you up for success. You will have more success. You will feel more confident because you're doing what you need to do in the world on your terms. And that, to me, is a huge self-care move in service to everything that's going for you, and that could be even better, because if you're not taking care of you, it's no one else's job but yourself, right? And so you can take care of a toddler and yourself at the same time. It's totally possible, but it requires boundaries. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode on what to do when boundaries feel a little shaky, and how you can shift that as a high EQ leader, as someone who's aware and someone who's willing to take the risk to do something different in service to your doing, right? That's what we're talking about here, being in service to your doing. Therefore, you feel better, you bring more joy and fulfillment to you, which is a ripple effect in your whole family and your whole life, and work with your peers and your colleagues and your team and even your managers. Have a great day. I'm so glad you're here. And thanks. Have fun with those boundaries. Let me know if and what you try. In fact, leave me a message here on the anchor.fm/the Pausecast. That's the link to this show. Or you can simply email me back. You can send me an email on my Instagram website. There's all kinds of stuff there, or LinkedIn, email. It's all good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.